Good morning. It's Victoria Lorient Fabish. I'm a holistic psychotherapist or a registered psychotherapist, and I'm happy to be here live on another episode of Courageous Conversations. And boy, I've been witnessing lots of courageous conversations on Facebook, and I'm really impressed. And I'm really happy to be part of that conversation, the conversation of being courageous and not just, posturing. Which we're all good at. So it's really about, getting real and being vulnerable. And I've witnessed some amazing vulnerability, and my heart is open and really feeling it. And that's why I decided to talk about rejection. I have a strong, long history and major relationship with the concept of rejection. And it started very, very early. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story, but I also want to tell you that it's something that drives a lot of people. Certainly in my office as a psychotherapist and as a speaker, and I dialogue with people all the time, and the notion of fear of being rejected or having been rejected or suffering the trauma and pain of rejection are all part and parcel of what drives so many of us. Also what teaches so many of us. And I know that rejection was a massive part of my being who I am here today. The reason I say this is because my relationship with rejection started very, 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 very early in my family of origin. It was a tumultuous family, and with many moves. We moved, from Montreal to Brazil, lived in Brazil, then back to Montreal. Or Portugal, Brazil, we've lived all over. And as a kid, until I was about 16, there were many transatlantic moves. And I remember never being able to just relax and enjoy things. I mean, I would enjoy it, but I always knew that when I started to really enjoy things were going to, hi Tim, how are you? Things were going to change. And as you guys are coming on, let me know you're here, and I'm just going to do a quick share. I get into my story and then I forget to share, but I'm going to share on my group, Courageous Conversations, which I hope you join, because it's just been an awesome group of really cool, wonderful individuals who are, on the journey of being courageous with themselves and others. So I just really would like you to join the group, Courageous Conversations, because I have lots of great nuggets for that group often. So you get like a special kind of relationship with me by joining the group, but also you get to have some other people supporting you on your journey. So I'm just gonna do a quickie here and share, and also please share, because this is gonna be good. I'm gonna be talking about rejection and coping with it, and I'm also gonna be telling you a little bit about my story and my relationship with rejection. As soon as I finish, I want to just share on all my pages, and then I'm going to tell you my heartfelt, vulnerable story around my experiences around rejection. And they're not small, but they've taught me like a heck of a lot. Well, no, a hell of a lot. They've taught me a hell of a lot. So I've done my share here. Okay, so if you would like to share this, I would really appreciate it. Sharing is caring, and invite people to come in as well, because I'm going to be teaching some tools and tips to cope and to become resilient to rejection, but also I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. So my first experiences around rejection, because there was so much volatility in my family, I would have these massive temper tantrums as a kid. And I've always been a bigger personality, so I would have like stomp your feet, lose your mind kind of, as a little kid. It was my only way of coping with what was going on around me. I wanted some control in a largely out of control situation. And I would just have these major temper tantrums that of course would create so much like rejection of me, because I was impossible to take. But also nobody really took the time to go, why are you having these temper tantrums? No, I was just I needed to be rejected for it. It's like, you are wrong for doing this. You must, stop this temper tantrum crap. and there was never like take a moment to understand what's happening with me. Why am I feeling this way? And because everyone was in their own turmoil, to be honest with you, everyone in the family was in their own personal version of hell. So my way of expressing it was, everyone had their own way, but for me it was temper tantrums. And so I became deeply rejected for being, loud and dramatic and self-centered and selfish and the things that that people call people that are having temper tantrums. And it started my journey, I would say, to really learning very difficult lesson as a kid, because what we want is to be accepted and to be understood and to be valued and to be all those things. But what I learned really early is what's going to be important here is you better be emotionally self-sufficient. My father used to say, if you need a helping hand, look at the end of your own arm. So on the one hand, as a kid, that's hard, right, to hear. But as an adult, I really appreciate having heard that. I've been able to transform a lot of the feelings of pain, and they were many, profound pain of feeling rejected by my family, for my reactions, for my personality, for the way I coped with the chaos. But that was on wholesale offer rejection, essentially. That's what it was. It was just wholesale offer of rejection, essentially. And I would say that parlayed into my experiences at school. And I mean, because I moved I moved Montreal to Portugal for 3 years, and then back to Montreal, and then Brazil for 6 years. So that was the childhood. I would go in my personality and just be kind of arrive at a new place and not filter my personality. I would just like, this is me, and my hand is up, and I'm, really personality filled. But kids being kids are like, who's this? And so that who's this turned into groups rejecting me. I mean, I feel a little bit of even, shame from that time, even. Like that I carry a little bit today. And that was very, very, I felt very ashamed that my family was rejecting me. People at school were rejecting me as a kid. And so it was very much like I hid that. It was a very shamey feeling to have people reject me. And I know that people feel that very much in their own life. But for me, it was this, I have this personality and as a child, and I have such compassion for myself as a child, because I didn't just hide from the shame and from the feelings of hurt. It was shame, and it was hurt, and it was, I couldn't say anything to my family at home because they were like, well, you see, that's of course you're going to be rejected. People are going to reject you because your personality is rejectable. And I just remember thinking, well, I remember thinking at a moment in time when a school bus of kids were making fun of me. Because, I was one of these kids that also didn't ignore when people made fun of me. I'd be just like, so when that happened, it got worse, right? When I started to defend myself, it got worse. And the advice that was given to me is just ignore it. Just ignore it. I'm thinking, how do you ignore, a bus full of people making fun of me? And making fun of me, teasing me for being, for being not quiet, for whatever it was. It was just bossy, just full rejection of my being. And I thought to myself, even though it was extraordinarily hurtful and painful, and that repeated itself into my, I would say, grade 6 or 7. And then I got it in my head that I needed to filter my personality. I needed to do it differently. I needed to find other ways to relate to people, because the one thing I did know is that I loved people and I needed people, and I'm an extrovert. And I'm an introvert sometimes. I can be very introverted at times. People go, really, really? I'm like, yeah, there are times when I'm but what I know fundamentally is I do need human beings. And so in a childhood of feeling all of that rejection, I started to develop very early on the ability to be two things. One, oh, I'm getting teary just thinking about all this. One, emotional self-sufficiency. I'm going to be okay on my own. Since I can't count on the family and I can't count on the kids, I started to develop special relationships with teachers. I started to develop special, like amazing. Also, I channeled a lot of this into being a little actress. I joined theater, like plays, and I became the president of my class in grade 8. People are like, who's going to vote for you? I'm like, I don't care. I'm just going to put it out there and see what happens. And I guess I was offering something better than the other person. Anyways, I became the president of my class in grade 8. It was pretty wild. But I realized from those experiences that I could, it was like, you're going to find ways to develop special relationships with one human being. Like I'd have one good friend, or I would have, the theater people that were all kind of bombastic like I was, or I would have, until I discovered all of that, it was years of pain and years of inner pain, but outer, like, I'll show you kind of thing. But I would say that the number one thing is I became very adept, and I recommend this, at emotional self-sufficiency, that I found ways to be caring of me by me. And I started to really, and I also decided, and I feel kind of sad for me on that one, on this one that I'm about to tell you, is I filtered my personality. I realized, well, people aren't going to just like you if you're just out there, if you're just yourself. You can't just be yourself. And that was sad for me. And that is sad for me that I did years of that. And even today, I will filter parts of myself. Because even though people are like, oh, accept you, oh, yes, unconditional. No, my experience with human beings is that acceptance is not on offer in a wholesale way. It's on offer in a very retail way, and it's on offer very rarely. And so there are people that do accept me just as I am, but they're very few and far between. And I don't begrudge anyone that, because what I've later in my life understood is that everyone's in some sort of pain. Everyone's in some sort of journey. Everyone's in some sort of personal hell of their own. I certainly as a child was in definite personal hell. And I would develop these one-on-one relationships with people that they were in their own little hell, and then we would bond. I had a good friend of mine. She had a terrible eating disorder, and we became very close because I was very accepting of her. I wasn't trying to change her. I was just like, this is your journey, and one thing I understand is how you feel, is feeling that that you're not acceptable as is. And my journey, thankfully, wasn't an eating disorder, but my journey was, I definitely felt shame about not feeling accepted by my family, or not feeling accepted by children and kids at school. But I had precious, wonderful teachers that would tap me and go, I think you're cool. Like I had, Mr. Jocelyn. He would really like me. He thought I was great. He thought I had a cool personality. And he really made me feel as, yeah, you've got something. Or Mrs. Stanton, who was, she was my theater inspiration in Brazil at the American school. And, that was just like, that was just massive to have this woman go, you're interesting. She wasn't easy. She was, people were afraid of her, but she was not someone who gave out compliments just, freely. So when she gave me a compliment, I was like, okay, this is someone I can feel okay about myself around. Or the neighbor who would be like, they don't know what they're talking about, your family. You are awesome. And she would teach me things about poetry. And then later on, the LaCroix, my deep, deep, deep friend, Lisa Betts-Lacroix, who does Superpower You. I tell my story in the interview that she interviews me. Check it out. It's in my feed. And if you're interested, I'll post it again. But that family was so accepting of me. And they were all artists. And they were all like, yeah, we love you. We think you're so cool. And I tempered my temper tantrum being. And that part became filtered, because what's a temper tantrum? Usually a child has temper tantrums because they want control in a situation that is out of control. And so when I started to feel a little bit more in control in my life, I no longer had to be so controlling and so temper tantrumy and so bombastic with what I need. I started to get a little bit of what I needed, and it started to soothe my soul a little bit and heal my soul just a little bit. I mean, it's been a lifelong journey, and I believe that I do what I do today because I really understand what the path is to feel profoundly rejected. And people may be surprised about that, because I seem like someone who's, highly, no, I really coped with that. And I still today, by the way, just full disclosure, feel afraid of rejection today. But I temper it, like this moment, you know what I mean? Like at every moment, it still is a bit of a thing for me, as an old vestige of the past. But what I can tell you is the number one thing that I learned was, what really changed everything for me, was finding human beings that were simpatico to me. I just were on the same wavelength as me, that were okay with, kind of being imperfect and kind of being like kind of bigger personality and laughing and dramatic and also emotional and feeling things deeply and all of that. And those people became, a little bit of an elixir to that little girl that was just so rejected. And also, I have developed a lot of compassion for those who have rejected me, because I realized that, I probably reminded them of who they didn't want to be, or who they were, or what it was. I don't know. I just know that the rejection of the children, for example, toward me, it's like, probably I was just this really bossy, sort of overly kind of precocious kid. They're like, who is this? Who do you think you are kind of energy. And then, family rejection of me, they were in pain. They were in a tremendous amount of pain. And so my father would be like, you're too masculine, you're not feminine enough, no one's gonna love you, you're fat, you're this, you're that. Or my mother was like, stop being so loud, stop being so, just like, calm yourself, just too much. Or my sister and I just, we were struggling in that family in many ways. And so, and people going through their own mental health things, mental illness things, mental wellness issues. So a lot of the journey is this combined concept of emotional self-sufficiency coupled with developing empathy for the other. And I believe that dual concept, self-sufficiency yet empathy for the other, takes you out of that very self-centered journey of victimhood. And not only that, I became, I had the ultimate adult rejection when I was an actor, and I had some amazing success. And then I wrote a play about Mae West that was amazing, but it got majorly publicly rejected. And I've told this story before, but it wasn't just small time rejected. It was a good play. It was a very good play. I played Mae West, and we sang some great old Mae West songs, and one day I'll revive it. But it was before the internet, and the critic of the Star, Veit Wagner, the arts critic of the Star, it was a small little play show that we put on at the Berkeley Street Theater Extra Space upstairs, this little jewel of a theater, and it was a wonderful experience. And really, it was not a horrible play. It was a good play, and I know this because many people who saw it said that, but maybe it was not the level of Les Mis. Well, duh. And the guy, puts a picture of me on the cover of the art section, of the Star, pre-internet. All of Toronto sees this, of me as Mae West, and then he puts the caption, "Throw Mae a Mae West." My heart broke, essentially. My heart broke. And I had put all of my energy and all of my money, energy, time, effort, costumes, my soul, my blood, my sweat, my tears. I had had success with Coming Out of the Fridge, my very first play that I wrote. It was very well respected by the media. But then this second play that I wrote a couple of years after that, I guess, and you know, only until 2 years ago did I understand that Throw May and Mae West wasn't Throw Victoria Vachon food cakes. I thought that's what he was saying. No, Throw May a life jacket, which was an old British term for, you know, a life jacket. But, you know, and Richard Azunian from the CBC basically said, who the hell does she think she is? Like, oh, she could even say she wrote it, she started it, and she produced. I didn't direct it. Who the hell does she think she is? Was what was being said. I'm like, are you serious? Who the hell does she thinks she is? I just am a creative person that freaking makes things happen, is who I thought I am, or I think I am. But they went about the business of shaming me into not. Basically, I was 20. Oh, in my mid-20s, and I just said, no, that's enough of acting and theater for me. I was already studying this other stuff, and I was already doing holistic stuff, and so my career, I somehow got disconnected right in the heat of the moment. So, anyway, I'm just going to continue my story. Life will make you, life will make you become humble. That's for darn sure. So anyways, back to my theater story. Because I want to get to some really good tools for you. So I realized that the theater world was just kind of not for me. I really didn't want to do. I did not want to do a business that I was completely sending all of my energy into, and so I became very discerning as to where I'm going to put my energy. And I realized that the theater was not going to be where I would most, you know, express myself in a way that I could really, really get what it is that I needed. So I decided to do what it is that I also loved, which is to work with people and talk with people. And so I became the work that I'm doing now. Now, I will say to you that the pain of all of that rejection, which is what I'm really speaking about, you know, basically, the key experience to coping with rejection is this: self-sufficiency. Number one, emotional self-sufficiency. Be discerning who you spend time with, and allow yourself journeys of self-love. Do a lot of journaling. That is what got me through this. And also find people that are like you. That's the biggest lesson in all of this. And don't just take what people are saying and go, yeah, well, then maybe I'm not lovable. No. Allow for people to have their journey. And allow for people to just be who they are, because they're in their own personal hell as well. They're rejecting you because you remind them of who they can't be, or whatever it may be. Or you're maybe triggering them. You know, that is what I realized in a lot of how my family was and how other people. So I just want you to really understand that when you are coping with rejection, don't just mute yourself. Find ways to teflon yourself. And the biggest way, I would say, is journaling, developing a deep relationship with yourself, and finding different mentors and different people that do relate to you and do accept you. And also, a very important one is find your value system. What is important to you? And that's why I wrote the book Find Your Self Culture, because Find Your Self Culture is really about, to be honest with you, the journey of human beings finding who they are truly, finding out who they truly are. And there's no way around the mountain, folks. You gotta like you, even if it isn't perfect. And my temper tantrums were a version of my personality that was simply to survive. And when I edited that out of my personality, like temper tantrums, not as much of a part of I didn't need to control as much. It became so much easier, because it's like, I've got this good personality. It doesn't all have to be about control and temper tantruming. And I learned that as I grew up. And I learned that profoundly as I grew up. So I could go on about this topic. I will maybe do another video on, you know, developing resiliency toward rejection. But comedy also has been a huge piece, laughing at myself and laughing at life. And loving myself and licking my own wounds. And there were many. There have been many. And I still carry that shit with me, but it's not as loud. It's not as loud. So you never really are over it. A great therapist used to say to me, you're never going to be fully over it, Victoria, but it just won't be as loud. And I say that to my clients. You're never going to be, you know, over it. How does one journal? I'll tell you how one journals. You sit down and you pour your heart out into a piece of paper as you would a therapist, as you would God or the universe. And just say, I'm feeling this and I feel this and I don't trust this person and this really hurts and I'm scared, you know, and then find at the end of the journaling a way to go, you know, I love me, and I, you know, find ways to do positive affirmations at the end of a journal entry. I always end my journal with, you know, I accept myself, I love myself, and I trust in the process of the universe, something like that. And I will talk more about journaling if that's something that's of interest to people. So have a beautiful, beautiful day, everybody. Understand that rejection is part of life, but try and translate that rejection into finding out what's going on with you, and then developing emotional self-sufficiency and empathy for those who are rejecting you in some way. I mean, it wasn't quick that I developed the empathy. It was later on in my life that I did some therapy. Okay? And also just remember that when you're acting out, if people are rejecting a part of you that you're acting out, I'll tell you what, it's just you've got to find out what that's about. You've got to find out what that's about. Tomorrow I'm coming in with a guest, Gail Scott. Liz Scott's going to come on at some point, but Gail Scott is a wonderful Tantra. She's got a great story talking about sexuality and sexual abuse and all these incredible, but also really the story of resiliency and survival. Join my group, Courageous Conversations, because, you know, I do special stuff for that group and I want you there. All right? And I love you, and big, 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 big hugs towards you. I accept you. Mwah. Bye for now.